This is my 2025. No, I'm just kidding, guys. I've always wanted to do the Doug DeMuro meme, and I finally got to do it. But welcome to the channel, and welcome to the 10,000 mile review of my supercharged Mustang GT. All right, well, let's get to business here. We're gonna talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of my 2025 supercharged Mustang GT. So to knock the specs and the modifications off first, let's list them. So what I have, this is a GT Premium with the 401A and the Performance Pack. And I'm gonna talk to you guys a little bit here why I don't think the Performance Pack really is so much worth it on these cars. I think it's just too expensive and you don't get enough for it. But in terms of modifications, so we are Whippled, which is the Stage 2 kit with the 55-pound injectors. We're on a 3.625 pulley. We're running an E30 tune. And then we also have stainless power long tube headers with an MBRP exhaust. So we're pretty modified. We're making a lot of horsepower. I've never actually dynoed the car, but what I've been reading for people who have a similar setup to me, give or take, we should be around the 800 wheel horsepower mark. And I'm gonna talk to you guys about the reliability and what it's like driving this car for 10,000 miles. So let's start with the Ford stuff first. So there are some complaints with build quality on these cars, and I can kind of confirm there's some truth to them, unfortunately. It's getting really bright. I'm gonna switch to sunglasses. Okay, this is a lot better. So now you guys aren't looking at my sun face, or I'm just squinting at the camera the whole time. So when it comes to build quality, exterior and interior, I think there are some flaws. And I'm gonna compare this car to my last generation Mustang. I had a 2018 S550. So comparing it to that, the panel gap quality isn't that excellent. Now, I know Mustangs have kind of had a history with not very good panel gaps, and it definitely is pretty true with the S650s. Generally, they're pretty good. I know when the 2016 GT350s came out, they were pretty bad. On these new S650s, they're not awful. They're certainly not perfect. They're by no means like Tesla quality, where if you guys have seen Teslas, go look at the panel gaps. If you see one in a parking lot, start looking at the panel gaps. They're absolutely terrible. Every Tesla looks like it's been a crashed car. But unfortunately, Ford is just not as good as the Japanese manufacturer. So panel gap quality, generally it's pretty decent. I think mine is one of the better ones, but there's still some issues. Panel gap issues down here. There's panel gap issues with hood alignment. Now there is some adjustment you can do, which I have done and gotten it pretty close, almost perfect, but it's just unfortunate that you spend so much money on a car and the panel gap quality just isn't that great. Now, when it comes to the interior, we're gonna go over kind of the interior design choices here, but this is another place where I think Ford kind of failed at. So not in terms of design per se, but when I compare it to my S550 again, and also with my 2014, I had a 2014 Generation 1 Coyote. That was a Mustang GT Premium with the track pack. That was a pretty cool car. Gotta have it green, best color ever. But when I compare it to that car too, there's so many more shakes and rattles in this car compared to my past Mustangs, which is kind of unfortunate. You're spending more money on a newer car with a better design, essentially a better design, and there's still some rattles and shakes and some noises that come from the interior. And to me, that's kind of unfortunate. But I haven't tried to solution that yet. I know there are some like sprays, I guess like sound deadening sprays that people use that I think people have had some pretty good luck with. I've never tried that yet on my car, but that is something I want to give a go. Okay, so to get to my car and to my spec, again, like I said, this is a GT Premium with the 401A pack and the GT Performance Pack. So MSRP back in June of 2025, I think it was around 62, 63,000. I got the car for a bit over $7,000 off. It was closer to 8,000, so around I think like the 11% mark. If you guys are shopping for one of these Mustangs, don't ever pay MSRP, okay? These are one of the worst selling Mustangs. Sales have gotten a little bit better, but they are still far behind the past generations. You guys really should negotiate with dealerships, shop pricing, call around, and you really should not have any issue getting 10% off these cars. Go look at the channel Delivered. Tommy's one of my favorite content creators in that kind of category in the automotive space. go take some tips and tricks from him. But seriously, it's pretty easy to get 10% off on these cars. You just have to do some research, call around a bit, and if you open up your search area, it's gonna work for you a little bit better too. But don't pay MSRP on these, okay? They're absolutely not worth MSRP. So rolling into that price, I think these cars are a bit overpriced. And I promise you guys, we're just kind of covering the bad stuff here. I'm gonna get to all the good stuff and all the things I love about the car, but I want to shoot you guys straight right at the beginning of the video. There are some issues and some flaws with these cars that I'm not a big fan of. So anyways, with price, I think they're a bit expensive, okay? Comparing again to my S550, my Gen 3 Coyote, they, I think, are just so much better of a bargain. The Generation 4 Coyote doesn't really have any significant advancements over the Generation 3 Coyotes. Now you get the dual throttle bodies, the dual intakes, the dual air filters, and that's pretty cool, but there's nothing internally different on the bottom end of the block. Now there is an exception. If you guys opt for the Dark Horse, which I think is a really nice car, I just hate the pricing of them. I think Ford is crazy. I've tried calling Ford and to speak with their finance department with where they're coming up with $70,000 for a naturally aspirated Coyote Mustang, and they started laughing, I think mostly at me. So that was kind of unfortunate, didn't really get anywhere with that. But with the exception of the Dark Horse, they do have stronger connecting rods. I believe they're I-beam connecting rods as compared to the standard connecting rods on a GT Gen 4 Coyote, but there is a bit of block enhancement on the Dark Horse Coyotes that there isn't with the GTs. Also too, if you guys like manual cars, which this is a 6-speed manual, MT82 car unfortunately, but if you like your 6-speed manuals, the Dark Horse definitely has the advantage there where you guys can get a Tremec 3160 as opposed to the MT82, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. Now, I knew with this car, right when I was gonna buy it, I knew I wasn't gonna leave it stock. I knew this was gonna be a supercharged car. The Whipple kits came out and I really want to do that. I didn't want to throw a Whipple at my old S550 Coyote. I had like 65,000 miles on it, and to me, I just kind of want to start new, start fresh, and then also start a YouTube channel where I could show you guys the new S650 Mustangs. And I'm trying to be one of those channels that gets you guys more in the driver's seat, give you more information, because even still now with these S650s, there's not a whole lot of information, I think, readily available on YouTube. Now, if you go to Facebook pages and the forums, you can kind of figure out everything from there, but on YouTube, I still kind of find like a bunch of box standard stuff. So I want to give you guys more in depth on my channel with my S650. So with the modifications, like I said, I'm on a stage 2 Whipple kit, which went in about 2,000 miles. So really, we're actually a little bit over 8,000 miles on this, on the stage 2 Whipple kit, but 10,000 miles on the car, a little bit over 10,000 miles. And then we have headers, we have a little bit smaller pulley, we're running an E30 tune, and then of course the MBRP exhaust. Now, something I've learned, okay, that I think this is super crucial. If you guys are watching this video and you guys are taking anything from it, please take this. Something super crucial with these stage 2 or even stage 1 Whipple kits, if you guys are venturing off of the stock Whipple tune and you guys are going with a custom tuner, which seems like a lot of people are doing these days, me specifically, I am Rob Shoemaker tuned. If you guys are doing that with your car, please keep in mind the P0420 and P0430 check engine codes, okay? Those codes are going to alert you if your cats are going bad. If your cats are going bad, which they're gonna do so pretty quick on a custom tune on a Whipple, because on the stock tunes, on the stock Whipple tunes, out of the box tunes, they have a cat protection mechanism built into the calibration, but that's not gonna be true on custom tunes. The custom tunes, if you go Wengard, Lund, Shoemaker, whatever it is, they're gonna be a much more aggressive tune, you're gonna make more power, but you're gonna burn your stock cats really quick. And I've seen a few instances on Facebook, on forums and on Facebook posts, that people have driven their cars with the Whipple on a custom tune where their cats have gone bad, which they've been alerted the P0420 or P0430 code, and they hurt the engine. Usually what happens is that stock cat, all that platinum in there clogs up, and then you don't really have any sufficient flow through the headers, through the exhaust for the engine to breathe, specifically exhale. So generally what happens on piston number 8, the piston ring breaks, one of the piston rings, and that's a catastrophic engine failure. If that happens, you guys need a new engine. So be incredibly wareful of that, okay? If you guys are on a Whipple and you guys have a custom tune, watch out for those PL420, PL430 codes, okay? Those can be really damaging to your engine. So when I had that happen to mine, quickly got the stock cats out of there, threw in catted long tube stainless power headers, and we've been running pretty good ever since. But that's just something you guys need to be careful of if you guys are doing a Whipple on your S650 and then you guys are running a custom tune. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the looks of these S650s. Personally, I really like them, okay? I have this thing, anytime a new Mustang comes out, I see it, you know, at the Detroit Auto Show, like online, pictures of it, videos of it, and generally I just kind of hate it, and then I warm up to it. The exact same thing happened when the new S550 released in 2015, and then also when they did the refresh for the 2018 model year. I initially hated it. I saw it in person. I was like, you know, that actually looks pretty good. With these S650s, I actually kind of like them right off the bat, and then the more I saw them, the more pictures I saw when people were modifying them, at least lowering them and then putting some ground effects on them, I thought they actually looked really good, and I still believe that to this day. I think this is definitely one of the better looking Mustangs. It's definitely very modern. I think it has some futuristic tones to it, and generally I'm actually really impressed with how these cars look. Now, you need to fix some things, okay? I don't know why Ford can't get this right, but as I've grown wiser, okay, as I've been aging, I have become so picky about stance and fitment, specifically wheel fitment. And these S650s look like they sit on stilts from the factory, and I hate that. So one of the first things I did with my car when I got it is put it on lowering springs. These ones specifically are the Accelitech lowering springs from CJ Pony Ports. There's a bunch of good kits out there, Ibach kits, the Ceta kits. You're not gonna go wrong when it comes to lowering springs. Generally, I've seen everybody kind of likes the brand that they pick and they go with. The Accelitech ones, I think, give it a really good stance, really good fitment in terms of wheel to fender verticality, and they're also pretty cost effective. I think they're like 200 bucks, so they're relatively cheap for lowering springs. Usually they can kind of swim between the $300 and $400 range, but with the Accelitechs, I had them on my S550 Mustang too, and they were perfect. I had them on there for 3 or 4 years, had no issues. We're 10,000 miles with these ones, and still no issues. Also too, now with fitment, wheel fitment, I have the Accelitech 1-inch spacers on the wheels, so pushes the wheels out a little bit. On the rears, I think they're really, really aggressive. I actually love that. And then on the fronts though, I think my fitment could be a little bit better, but you kind of run into rubbing issues. So I'm gonna leave them at 1 inch for now for wheel spacing, but generally, I think get a 1-inch spacer on your wheels and it's gonna make it look a lot better. I'm just really picky when it comes to stance and fitment. So anytime I see a Mustang driving with stock stance and stock wheels, generally I'm not a fan, okay? So that's something I'm gonna be doing to all my cars in the future, just making sure I really like the stance and I really like the fitment. Also too, with most Mustangs, I know this is kind of a preference thing, but what I find that most Mustangs need is just more chin, okay? So I have on my cars the MP Concepts front splitter. I think it looks really good. It's really easy to install. It's definitely very robust. I like having a plastic splitter on the front. I know people sometimes opt for carbon fiber. I think that's a little crazy because no matter where you drive, you're gonna scrape on something. So this is the MP Concepts. I think it's a handsome splitter. I do like the 2-stage design and the kind of fins that sit next to the wheels. So overall, I think it's a really good product, cheap, easy to install, and you know, it makes a meaningful improvement to the front of the car, which I think is probably the worst area for the S650. Generally, I like all of it. I think the S650 could have been a little bit better in the front. I think the side angle, I think, is really, really good looking. And then the rear, I also think is really good looking. I know people complain about the rear, that it looks like Camaros. I don't think it's that bad. Camaros, I find, have a generally pretty good rear end. I used to have a 2018 ZL1 1LE before it got stolen. Sad face. But the rear end on the S650s, I think, looks really, really good. Now, some aesthetic things I don't like about these S650s. Externally, I kind of get the stance and the fitment. They have to be somewhat usable for people who are just gonna buy the car and leave it stock. how my stance is now, I scrape on everything, okay? You guys have probably seen videos of me and you've heard the crunch of the plastic scraping on curbs. You just live with it. Like, it makes you cringe a little bit, but then when you get out and it looks so good, it like becomes almost worth it, okay? But something that Ford did, and it's almost a theme with this car that I really, really dislike, is on all of the plastic trim pieces, mine may not show all that well because I have a different front splitter. I do have side skirt extensions that attach to the stock side skirts, and then I'll show you guys the back here in a second. But they went with a diluted dark gray color, and they did this with the interior too, which I'll get to in just a second. I think it was a really bad choice. If you're going to have plastic parts on a car, whether that's interior or exterior, you need to make them jet black. Jet black is always just a good color. It works with everything. It works with every color scheme. It's never a wrong choice. They went with this like diluted, sun-faded looking dark gray, and I don't think it looks very good. So what I do, and even with the MP Concepts, they didn't go with a jet black color. They wanted to match the OEM S650 kind of plastic color theme. So they went with a diluted dark gray on this part, which I think is unfortunate. But I usually coat the plastic in like a plastic kind of blackener or plastic restorer just to give it a more enhanced, darker look. And I think that makes it look a lot better. But just that sun-faded gray look, I think was such a bad choice. Now with the side skirts, I have side skirt extensions, which are a gloss black, and those are just screwed onto the stock side skirts. Again, that ugly sun-faded color, I have them coated in like that black plastic restorer. So I think that makes them look a lot better, but still, Ford, I think you guys need to change that decision. Maybe I'll give you guys another call and you can laugh at me, but you should take my ideas because I think they're better than some of your in-house ones. Let me show you guys the back here. Okay, so at the back of the car, I hated the stock lower valence so much. In terms of design, I think it was a actual fallback from the old S550 models. I think the S550s had a really good lower diffuser on the rear. And then with the S650 models, they kind of fell away with that, unfortunately. So it's a pretty bulky lower diffuser. I don't think that's such a problem, but it adds so much space to that sun-faded, ugly, dark and gray color. So I just swapped mine out completely. This is the eBay part, okay? This is automotive exceptionalism. Go buy your parts on eBay. They're really cheap and they fit pretty good. Actually, this one actually fit perfectly here, but this is as you guys can see, a gloss jet black with some vortices. I know it's a little rice on a Mustang, but I think it actually fits pretty good. And I think it helps the side profile of the car here. And then also too, this is a liquid vinyl wicker bill that screws into the stock GT Performance Pack wing. So I don't know if I mentioned to you guys yet, but this is actually a Night Pony package. So you do have the darkened front headlight bezels, the black roof, and the black wing. So with this, you just use a rivet gun, you screw into the spoiler, and then the wicker bill attaches to that. And I think it looks pretty good. It gives a little bit more presence, a little bit more wing area, so to speak. So generally, I think this is a pretty good improvement. Some people like the screws on the back, some people don't. I actually don't mind it. I think it looks pretty decent, at least when they're kind of sitting down facing. So generally, it's pretty good. And then we have the form taillights. I'm not a big fan of red on cars, okay? I don't like the color red, and I don't like red pieces on cars. So with Mustangs, that's a pretty easy fix. You just go for the Euro taillights. And with this color combo, I think the clear form lighting taillights, definitely a really good choice. I've been super happy with them. They've worked perfect. I've had no issues. Install is a bit annoying with these. You actually do have to remove the rear bumper, which is not true for the S550 Mustangs, but for the S650s, you do have to remove them. Let me show you guys the side profile of the rear, just to give you guys a decent look of what I think looks really good here. So this is the side profile of the rear, and I think with the wicker bill and with the new lower valence, there's a lot of angularity going from a side profile, and that I think looks really, really good, especially with the black MPRB exhaust tips. But Generally, this is probably my favorite part of the S650s is the rear side profile and then the rear angle profile. Generally, just such a good looking car from this angle. Taking the sunglasses off. So let me talk to you guys about my driving experience with this car. Generally, it's been really good. The Whipple doesn't really have any quirks to it, which is something I really appreciate with it. There's no oil changes you have to do. Well, the Whipple manual states that you have to do the Whipple rotor pack oil change every 100,000 miles, which is basically no oil changes, but we definitely will do that. I'm probably actually gonna do that at 50,000 miles. But overall, the Whipple doesn't really have any quirks. I think far less quirks than if you would go with a centrifugal supercharger or with turbochargers. I know with the centrifugal supercharger, you kind of want to change the supercharger oil, I think about as often as the engine oil, but besides engine oil, which you're gonna be doing every 5,000 miles anyways, there's really no crazy things you have to do with the Whipple. Now, I know we're only 10,000 miles in, but genuinely, it's been a perfect experience so far. I've not had one hiccup or any weird issue in these 10,000 miles, and it's just been a blast to drive. It really is so much fun. If you guys wanna know what 800 horsepower feels like, go to Spotify. And you shouldn't be using Apple Music, you should be using Spotify, okay? Like a grown-up. Go to Spotify and look up Dire Straits' Money for Nothing. The intro guitar to that song is what it emotionally feels like to drive 800 wheel horsepower. It's just the best thing ever. Now, there's absolutely some caveats to that 800 wheel horsepower mark. One is grip. So, you guys probably can't really tell on camera, but these are Firestone Indy Firehawk 500s. They are on the GT Performance wheels, okay? Now, I do think the GT Performance Pack wheels are genuinely really pretty, okay? They're hard to clean, but they look really good. I think they're one of the best wheels that Ford did. The problem with them is that I think they're too small. So the largest tire you can get on these is 275 in terms of width. That's just not wide enough for throwing a supercharger at your S650 Mustang. I really want to go with 11-inch wheels in the rear so we can fit 315s or 325s. That's definitely going to be a future purchase on this car. But for now, we're just going to get away with the 275 tire width on these stock GT Performance Pack wheels. Again, they look really good. I think this is one of the cool benefits you get with the Performance Pack, but again, the wheels just are too small for 800 horsepower or really any application where you're going to supercharge the car. If you guys are NA and keeping the Coyote NA, I think the Performance Pack makes more sense. But if you guys are going to supercharge the car, I would probably forgo that, okay? You're going to need a new wheel setup anyways. You're going to be doing suspension stuff to it anyways, which I have both vertical links and a cradle lockout kit ready to go for this car. I just haven't thrown them on yet. Also too, when you guys supercharge your car, you're gonna go through tires pretty quick. That's kind of a given. I got 10,000 miles out of the rear Pirelli P0s. Now, I'm not a big fan of the Pirelli P0s. I know some people like them. To me, I think they're just an inadequate tire. I think there's a lot better choices, both with wet condition traction, with dry traction, and with tread life. I think the P0 just isn't a good enough tire to be putting on your $60,000, $70,000 Mustang. So, Ford, take note. Change out the tires, stop doing the Pirelli P0s, they suck. Now, another thing with the GT Performance Pack that I think is really cool, but probably not in the realms of necessary, are the brakes. So you get 6 piston calipers in the front, 4 piston calipers in the rear. Good God, are they incredibly strong brakes. Like, they really are, but I think it's a little bit unnecessary. Most people aren't gonna buy a GT to track the car. People are gonna be doing that on dark horses, Mach 1s, kind of the Shelby line. But for GTs, road racing, road tracking a car, these brakes I think are really good, but I think they're a little bit overkill. I think there's some money to be saved not opting for them. And also, they produce a lot of brake dust, which I know is kind of the name of the game with big, powerful Brembo brakes, but it just makes it much more annoying to clean when it comes to the wheels. But even with all that said, they are incredibly powerful brakes, and that is something I do really like, but I don't know if it's all that worth it paying $6,000, $7,000 more for the car to get the GT Performance Pack when you still can get either the Brembo brake option on a non-Performance Pack car, or just stick with 4-piston fronts. The 4-piston front Brembos are still incredibly exceptional, incredibly strong brakes. I don't think it's so much necessary on this. All right, guys, I actually had to take a little bit of a break since it started raining, but as far as practicality with the car goes, I don't actually find it too bad. Now, when it comes to my standards for what I expect in a car in terms of practicality, it's really nothing too crazy for me. I don't really carry anything. I don't haul a lot of items or luggage or anything like that. Generally, it's just me transporting myself. And right now I live in Dallas, Texas. So roads 24/7 generally are pretty good. We do get snow a few days out of the year. You just don't drive those 3 days. It's not that big of a deal. And on the days that it rains or it's wet, kind of like today a little bit, you just don't go super crazy on the car. Now, 800 horsepower is definitely overpowered even for dry roads, but when it's wet, you just kind of take it easy. The car will do just fine. Just make sure you have decent tread on your tires. I actually just replaced the rear tires, and you'll be okay. Just don't go super crazy, and the car will be pretty docile and gentle with you. So trunk space is actually pretty good. Now, it is a Mustang, so it's not going to be able to carry a crazy payload, but I definitely think it's better than Camaros, and I've never ran into an issue where my Mustang couldn't carry something that I needed it to carry. Now, again, like I said, my standards aren't super crazy when it comes to practicality for a car, but generally the trunk, I find it perfect. I don't have any issues with it. So now, obviously for you guys, if you're buying a Mustang, you kind of know what you're getting in terms of practicality. So you know you're not going to be able to tow or to store anything super crazy. It's not going to be like a family car, not by any means. But as far as my single life and what I need to carry and what I need to do with it, it does super perfect. It does super well for everything I need. Now, again, we're in Dallas right now. We're actually moving to Florida here in a month, but even in Florida, I don't expect it really to change. Florida doesn't get snow. It does get a little bit more rain, but other than that, the car will do just fine in those conditions that I drive, at least where I am geographically. Now, when it comes to gas mileage, you guys can honestly throw that out the window. If you're driving a 700, 800 wheel horsepower supercharged Mustang, you're not expecting to get good gas mileage, okay? I see some people on Facebook pages. There's a guy. His car's name is Trevor. If you guys are on the 2024 Mustang, Dark Horse, Mustang GT Facebook page, you guys have probably ran into Trevor before. Atlas Blue Mustang. Anyways, but I see him, he gets like 28, 29 miles per gallon. Now that's probably some of the gentlest driving I've ever seen on a V8, but good for him for being able to extract that from a 5-liter Coyote. But for me, it's kind of embarrassing, okay? I get around like 17 miles per gallon. Now, we drive this car, okay? If I buy 800 horsepower, I'm gonna use 800 horsepower. So gas mileage is terrible. Like, just to shoot you guys straight, gas mileage is not gonna be very good when you guys force induct a Generation 4 Coyote. It's just gonna be bad. It's just a price you have to eat for the enjoyment of having this much power. But again, if you guys are supercharging a Mustang or turbocharging a Mustang, you can kind of expect what you're gonna get for gas mileage. It's gonna be low. It's just not gonna be very good. Really, for myself personally, in terms of gas, whenever it's low, I just fill it up. I'm not gonna sweat it. Also on E30, you get even worse gas mileage. Now you get to do a little bit of a splash of E85 in there, which makes it a little bit cheaper. But yeah, E30, it's a kill tune. It makes the most power on that. That's what I generally run with the car during the summer months. And then during the winter months, I run 93. But especially on E30, you're not gonna get very good gas mileage. That's just a known thing. You just live with it and you enjoy the car for what it is. And it's looking very pretty. Now, some of my gripes with Ford's kind of decisions when it comes to customizing and optioning these Mustangs is I feel like Ford has put too many options there. So for one, I don't know why they allow you to choose either an active exhaust with quad tips or a non-active exhaust with dual tips. I think they did the right thing with the S650 Mustangs, and you got quad tips no matter what, if you went active exhaust or non-active. With the S650, they took a step back there. And if you don't do active, you get single tip, well, dual tip, single tip each side exhaust. So mine is a non-active car. I didn't really care about that. I knew I was gonna throw an exhaust. I've had active exhaust before on my ZL1 1LE. I found that I never used it, so I would just keep it in the loudest setting, annoy my neighbors. I'm very good at that. And then I would just drive the car. I'd never be finicky with the exhaust or set my mode. It's just never something I really cared about. So with this is a non-active car. Now with my exhaust in the rear, remember we replaced the lower valence on the back. So the one we went with was one that allowed for quad tip. So you can cut the stock dual tip lower valence to fit a quad tip exhaust, and it's gonna bolt right up. It's gonna fit perfectly fine. I did actually end up doing that, but then I just hated the rear valence so much, so I swapped it out with a gloss black one. Again, this one allows for quad tip exhaust. So you have the black MBRB Armor Light Race Profile exhaust, again with the quad tips, and I just think it looks really good. Chrome is also another color I like to remove from cars. Chrome and red. I just don't think they're very good colors that fit on a car. But even speaking for the exhaust, I think there's a lot of other options that Ford allowed to be customized on these cars that I don't really understand why, because there's a cost associated when you are given the ability to option cars. I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive. Like, people like to option, people like to customize, but when you can spec a car in so many different ways, there's a cost that gets associated to that. And I wish Ford would chill on that a little bit and just do the good options that everybody wants. So quad tip exhaust, I don't really like the split screen, dual screen, single screen thing. Every car should just have the one monolithic screen, which again, we're gonna get into the interior shortly. I feel like there just would have been some money to be saved if Ford just went with a standard option set that most people are gonna want. But again, for me, this is a pretty practical car. I know it sounds a little crazy, but it's not quirky. There's no weird things I have to do with it. Every time I start it, it works. Every time I drive somewhere, I never have an issue with it. And again, we're running a lot of horsepower on a supercharged Whipple Stage 2 setup with our Generation 4 Coyote. So in terms of drivability, 10,000 miles, it's been fantastic. People are just speeding down this road with not a single fuck to give, which is pretty crazy to me because this is kind of a pedestrian area. Anyways, now in terms of ride quality, I'm on lowering springs. So lowering springs are gonna have some effect on ride quality. I don't think it's too bad, to be honest. Now, again, I've come from a ZL1 1LE, and that ride quality, or the suspension, it had the Multimatic dynamic spool valve suspension, which is a pretty trick setup for going around fast on the track. But the problem I had with it is that it rode like it was on a flat stack of washers. It was an incredibly uncomfortable car. Now with this suspension, I think it's pretty floaty stock. Actually, it was pretty surprising how soft and unjarring I found the suspension to be. But even with lowering springs, it's still not generally too bad, but overall, so with the suspension though, the way it's currently set up, it is a little bit harsher. I don't think it's too bad. Now in Dallas, the roads are absolutely horrible. These are by far and away the worst roads I've ever driven on. And I've lived in Minnesota, I lived in California, now I live here, I'm gonna be living in Tampa. Apparently Florida roads are pretty good, or at least a lot better than Texas, so I'm very much looking forward to that. But Texas roads, specifically in Dallas, they're the worst quality roads I've ever had the unfortune of driving on. But overall, I don't find it too bad. Now, I think for most people, they're gonna find the suspension to be a little bit harsh once you put it on lowering springs. So again, if you leave it stock, I don't think you should because it doesn't look very good, but if you do leave it stock, the suspension, it's pretty floaty, it's pretty comfortable. Now, but with the steering, generally a big complaint with this is people find it pretty soulless, pretty feelless. It's very light, it's not very intuitive, and you can't really detect imperfections and you can't really detect imperfections in the road and what the tires are actually doing. I actually find that pretty true. I'm not a big fan of the steering. When I first got into this car, I was coming from my S550, which also had that complaint, but the S550 I think was actually genuinely better than the S650 steering. It's pretty feelingless. It kind of feels like chewing gum in terms of the connection you have to the road. You have a sense of what it's doing, but it's really not all that good. And I think one of the first videos I made on this channel with this car, I took it up to, I think it was like Allen, which is north of Dallas. And I complained for probably 20 minutes just how much I did not like the steering, because overall I just didn't really think it was that good. Now after driving this car for 10,000 miles, the steering has definitely warmed up for me. It feels a lot better. You get used to it. You're able to detect what the front tires are doing a little bit better. And overall, you just kind of learn how the car is supposed to feel when you're turning. I still don't think it's all that great. Now again, this is a Mustang GT. This is a car that probably not a lot of people are gonna road race or do any actual turn tracking on. Most people are gonna buy it and make it go fast in a straight line, like me. That's what I did. So I don't have any plans to change any of the front suspension stuff. Really, it's just gonna be the rear suspension for traction. Is a complaint with the car. The steering is just not all that great of quality. It's just very, very feelingless. But again, you do get used to it. It does get better over time, and just in terms of learning the car. So I feel like once I go back to an S550 Mustang, which is my plan, something I want to do on this channel, I'm going to probably complain how tough the steering is, just because it's so incredibly light on these cars. Now you do have 3 settings for steering. It's normal, sport, and I think race. Even in race, it's still very soft, very light, and I wish this was something that Ford did better on this, but overall driving, I do think it's pretty good. Okay, so let's get to the interior. Obviously, as you guys have seen before, my Mustang interior is not the typical interior that you'll see. We've done a lot of red, a lot of Alcantara / suede wrapping with premium $2,000 verified, okay? Shipped from Italy exclusively, overnight, professional install. That's a joke. I bought this stuff from Amazon. It's actually pretty cheap. So you usually get like a pretty large piece of Alcantara. It's not Alcantara, it's actually suede, but you can actually get a pretty large piece for like 20, 30 bucks, cut it up and wrap the interior parts. But no, definitely not real suede here. But overall though, I do like it. I do like what I've done to the interior. So obviously, you guys can see the seat cover. We'll pan in some B-roll so you guys can get better shots of it. We've Alcantara wrapped, we suede wrapped a lot of things, including the steering wheel, and blacked out a lot of the chrome or put carbon fiber pieces, again, from Amazon, pretty cheap. But one thing I don't like in cars is too much chrome. So even in the interior, that's something that I've tried to get rid of. But generally speaking, the interior of these cars is gonna be where most people fall in the category of either they love it or they hate it. For me, I'm actually pretty indifferent with it. When I compare it to my S550, and I know I keep comparing my S550 Mustang in this video, but when I compare it to that, I do actually generally prefer kind of the center waterfall setup that is in the S550s compared to this, where it's not a monolithic center console. Now, I do think it actually looks pretty good. It is more modern. It very much looks like the BMW M2, which I think the M2 made the interior a bit more pretty than Ford did with the Mustang. But overall, I think the interior is pretty good. It's relatively okay. Now, keep in mind, people say that the interior has changed drastically, and the center console and the dashboard, it definitely did, but the interior door panels are identical. The seats are identical. The rear seats, they're identical. Now, again, when I was talking about the externals of this car in terms of the plastic trim, Ford did, I think, a really bad decision here, where they went with that like sun-faded dark gray color. If you go with jet black, which I really think Ford should have done for every piece of the interior, if you go with jet black, which may not seem super apparent on video, which we'll sit in the car in just a second, I'll take you guys through some features and we'll give more of my thoughts and kind of criticisms of the interior there. But if you go with the jet black interior, you can kind of get away with cheaper materials, using less soft touch, maybe not as great of a design, and it's kind of okay. Jet black, like I said, it's always just the correct color when it comes to trim and interior on cars. Ford didn't do that with this. They went with that really ugly dark gray sun faded color. I don't know why I don't see people complaining about it on the internet. I feel like I'm the only one who has that opinion, but genuinely, I really hate the color choice that Ford went with this. Now, you can do some interior colors, like you can do like a dark red seat, a cream seat, a tan seat, and that fixes it a little bit, but there's still the entire dashboard, the entire lower center console, the entire, actual center console, and then the door panels that still have that just ugly sun-faded gray look, and I don't think that looks very good. Now, what I do with mine, obviously trying to put a lot of red and cover that ugly color up, what I do with mine is I just use more of that interior kind of plastic trim restorer to give it like a wetter, darker look. I know a lot of people don't like kind of the greasy look on interiors. For some reason, I prefer it. And also, again, it darkens up that kind of sun-faded gray color. So that's something that I've done with my car that I think makes a little bit of an improvement on the interior. But overall, generally, I think Ford did, besides the color, I think Ford did a pretty good job. I don't have any real gripes with the interior. Now, I know it is the case of throwing iPads at everything, which is just kind of something modern cars have been doing. But I think it's pretty good. The dashboard is decent. The display is extremely clean, but let's hop inside the car and I'll show you guys the features a little bit more, and we'll kind of talk about the interior a little bit more in depth there. All right, welcome to the cockpit of the Mustang. So let's start her up. They of course do the engine stop start button, which is appreciated. Nobody wants the key anymore. So obviously, as you guys can see, I've definitely modified the interior quite a good bit in terms of pieces, trim, and just kind of stuff I've done to it to cover up a lot of the ugliness that I think that comes with that stupid color. I'm going to complain about it so much, and I've done it on my other videos. So welcome to Rev Theory. This is where we complain about interior Mustang colors. So here I do have a suede wrap. I did this myself. I think it's actually my second video on this channel. We did suede wrap the interior center console. Another thing too, okay, I think this actually looks pretty good. Now it is cheap Amazon suede, so I probably need to redo this. There's kind of some nicks and some fading here, but overall I think it looks pretty good. Now again, I do have the GT performance pack, so we do have the drift brake that Ford calls it. I think this is pretty crazy. There is already a problem enough on the internet. Ford Mustangs ending up in ditches where they do not belong and in the crowds. So putting a drift brake on a Mustang is pretty crazy. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I have tried it out a little bit, and it certainly does work. It is pretty functional as a drift brake, but it's not something you're seriously ever gonna use. It's just really a functioning electronic e-brake. Now, another modification that I forgot to mention in the beginning of this video, I do have an MGW short throw shifter. This is the race spec long version, so it actually is the longest throw of the MGW options. So I think this does improve the shifting of the MT82 transmission a bit better. It's not as clicky. You don't catch on synchros quite as easily or quite as often. It seems to have fixed the second to third, red line hard shift problem that kind of plagues these transmissions. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the MGW shifter. Now, I think the final fix that kind of corrects the MT82 problems is a clutch. Now, I still have the stock clutch here. I don't really ever plan on replacing it until the clutch goes bad. Now, I don't do any burnouts. I don't track the car. So generally, I'm pretty gentle on the clutch as I can be with a high horsepower car, but hopefully I get some decent life out of the clutch. I've driven Coyotes with stock clutches, stock MT82s, well into the 100,000 miles, and I've never had any issues with them, never had to replace the clutch. So hopefully at 10,000 miles, specifically 10,277.9, we still have quite a lot of life left on the clutch, but we'll see. If we blow a clutch, we blow a clutch and we'll have to replace it. So on the dashboard, I think it's pretty good. Now, my S550, back to it again, had the 401A high package with the digital dash, and I think that is the best dashboard ever fitted to a production car ever. This one's pretty close, but I don't think it's as good as the S550 digital dash. I liked how it was integrated at the center waterfall style with the separated screen here rather than the dual iPads that they just threw onto the dashboard. But something with this dashboard, it is pretty cool. You can kind of change modes. So we have normal here, sports, which changes the tack and the speed. And of course we have track, which this is actually my favorite mode, but if you're in track mode, it blunts the throttle a little bit. So I don't like driving like that, so I set my custom mode up to have the track tack. So I set my custom mode up to have the track tack, but I also get to keep traction control and not blunting the throttle, which is kind of weird. But if you guys didn't know that, when you set these cars to race mode, it actually blunts the throttle a little bit. I guess apparently that's kind of a preferred setting for for people who track their cars. You don't want such a sharp jab at the throttle. You don't want such a quick response when you jab the throttle on the track, so the car actually blunts the throttle response a little bit in race mode. But this is the mode I generally drive the car in, and I like it a lot. I think it's very clear, it's very readable. I like how it has a big position for your gear. I think that's relatively pretty nice, but I still think the S550, they just did it better. Now, this car does have 360 Copilot. I've never used it. We have auto detecting cruise control. I don't use it. We also have lane assist. I don't use it. I actually find lane assist pretty annoying. It doesn't actually center you in the lane, but it does keep you from going over the line. So really what just happens is you kind of bumper cart between the lanes if you don't actually, you know, take hold of the steering wheel. It's by no means a self-driving car. Now for me, if you have a manual transmission and 800 wheel horsepower, you're supposed to drive the car. I don't really ever like the idea of letting the car drive itself. So I just never use those features. I never really cared about them. Never been super important to me. Now, again, I believe this is the 401A high package that this comes with, but you do have My Color where you can change the colors of the interior. I think that's pretty cool. Some people find it gimmicky. I actually kind of like it, generally speaking. I've had it on all my Mustangs, so being able to change the color of the interior is pretty cool. One thing to note though with the S650 Mustangs is they are slowly getting rid of different places where the light projects. So in my S197, light projected from the floor, from 2 places in the doors, from the center console, from the cup holders. There was a light right here next to your hip, and then there's lights in the back. They don't have that anymore with the S650. All you get is the lights on the door handles and then lights where your feet are. So they've been removing places where the color is projected, so that's a bit unfortunate. One thing I've noted with this car is just Ford is constantly finding ways to save money, and I think a lot of them are in the wrong place, but you kind of live with it, sort of the way that inflation works. But overall, I do actually really like the interior. I think my preference still is for the S550. I think generally it's more of a cockpit feel rather than a luxury feel, where I find the S650 kind of fits more into, but it's still pretty good. I still feel pretty low slung. I don't feel like I'm sitting on top of the car, which has been a complaint with Mustangs in the past. And generally, I do have a pretty good preference for the interior of this car. So let's go take this car for a drive. All right guys, let's go for a little bit of a drive. We'll hop on the highway and we'll do some pulls. We're not gonna go super crazy. It's been raining today, so the streets do look pretty dry right now, but I don't wanna go absolutely insane. But just to show you guys kind of the driving experience of this car, generally it is pretty cool. Now it is just a Mustang GT at the end of the day, but I think I've done enough modifications to kind of make it my own. Nothing super crazy externally, but definitely lowering the car and putting some ground effects on it, and then a few other kind of pieces, taillights, the rear wicker bill. I think it makes it look a little bit better than normal. But oh, there's a Mustang right there. But let me meet you guys on the highway, and then I'll kind of show you guys a few pulls with it. Okay, now with the 2024 model year Mustang, if you got the 401A high package, you got the B&O sound system. This one, the 2025, they split those packages up. So I have a 401A, I actually don't have the B&O sound system, which I actually learned like 2 months ago, which is kind of disappointing. Overall though, I am a pretty big music person. I do find the stereo pretty good. My only complaint about it is that it doesn't get super loud. I kind of like blasting music sometimes, all right? On a loud car, windows down, driving on the highway, blasting music is a lot of fun. Now, with this stereo, it doesn't get quite as loud as it did with my with my S550 Mustang, but overall, I think the quality is really good. The bass is pretty good. I don't listen to a lot of super bassy songs, but as you can see, Dear Maria got me, and I'm listening to my pop punk playlist right now. But overall, I think the stereo is pretty good. It's just a bit on the quiet side. But let's get on the highway and do a few pulls. kind of chilly out today. It's been raining a bunch. The streets do look pretty dry, but they're probably still a little damp or a little moist. I know some people don't like that word, but moist. But anyways, it's probably not going to hook up super well. Generally, on hot summer days is when the car does the best in terms of hooking up. So this isn't the greatest conditions to show you guys just kind of how well the car can do in terms of traction. Also, again, like I was saying earlier, these tires are 275. Really, I need to upgrade to like a 315 or 325. You guys can probably see my traction control light is flickering, so definitely not hooking up all that well with this, but you know, we'll make do for the video. Here, we'll flip a UE and come back into Dallas. She is loud though, with the MBRP, Armor, Race. God, their exhaust names are so terrible. But with the MBRP, Armor Light, Black, Race, Profile exhaust, they really need to get better at that. MBRP, you guys need to name your exhaust to be way more intuitive to say, because I get tongue-tied every time I try to announce it in a video. But with that exhaust and with the stainless power headers, she is really loud, which has its pros, has its cons. Generally, I find it a pro, but I'm a little bit of a menace to Dallas. It's okay though, I'm leaving, so I reject you, Dallas. I don't want to be here anymore. We're going to Florida. Also, I'm excited to show you guys that road trip. That'll be coming up here in probably a month and a half after posting this video, after you guys see it. Driving this car on the highway is definitely its high point. There's so much pulling power with a Whipple Supercharged Coyote. It's just one of the best things ever. For you guys who kind of follow the Coyote LS kind of thing, something that Coyotes just do so well is volumetric efficiency. And because they're not a block and cam engine, there's not cam deflection that messes up with efficiencies. And all you really need to do is just throw boost and fuel at it, which the Whipple Stage 2 kits come with all the fueling you need. 55-pound injectors, you can run your stock returnless style fuel system, and it just does so well. These cars are so much fun on the highway once you throw boost at them. And even NA, they're still a lot of fun. Coyotes are great engines. But let's get back to the end of this video. All right guys, well that's gonna wrap up this video for my 10,000 mile review on my 2025 Stage 2 Whipple Supercharged Mustang GT. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Now, what I'm not gonna do at the end of this video that most people do on YouTube is browbeat you guys to subscribe, okay? I never wanna be that person. I want you guys to subscribe on your own volition. If you guys like my content, if you guys like this video, I would be more than honored for a subscription, but don't feel like you have to. I'm not gonna be the one to tell you. If you wanna comment, if you wanna like, again, be my guest, I'd be more than welcome and I'd be more than honored for you guys to do that. But I want you guys to make your own choice, okay? Free will is real in this world and you guys own that. So again, thank you guys for tuning into my video. I appreciate you guys coming here to my channel, enjoying my content. If you guys are here for educational or entertainment purposes, that's awesome. And that's more than what I could ever ask for. So again, appreciate you guys. I'll catch you in the next video. Take care. I'm thirsty. If you guys want to know what 8,000, sorry, not 8,000. I am thirsty. I didn't even realize somebody was getting out of that car and walking to that door until now. Maybe they recognize the video. Maybe they'll see themselves on YouTube. Anyways, Dallas is also home to some of the worst drivers too.